Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is Explanation of Battle Through the Heavens episode number 187 based on novel. So let's start. Everyone, the beast tide is in front. Now is the best time to attack. Since I suggested we form this alliance, the most dangerous front spot will be temporarily filled by my people, but once we are exhausted, we will pull back and it will be someone else's turn. While Xiao Yang was quietly shocked because of the terrifying beast tide, Han Yu's voice had once again appeared. Many people quietly sighed in relief when they heard that he would take the most dangerous spot. Would these people be so kind? Xiao Yang shook his head and smiled when he heard Han Yu's words. He understood the Hall of Souls very well. Would someone from that faction be this impartial? It was a great joke. Everyone, prepare to attack. A warm smile continued to hang on Han Yu's face. His eyes slowly swept over the large group before pausing on Xiao Yang and Zun Er. Subsequently, he abruptly turned his body and charged forward. Over 10 black-robed figures quickly followed behind him. The many experts quickly followed behind Han Yu's group. Their do qi slowly spread from their bodies. Xiao Yang's large group slowly rose into the sky. They were not too close to the front and had chosen to remain near the middle. The pressure near the middle would be less. The black mass in the sky formed an arrow shape with Han Yu's group at the front. If this large contingent were to erupt, the force would undoubtedly be extremely frightening. Let's go. Seeing that the formation had taken shape, Han Yu at the front finally waved his hand. He took the lead to charge forward. A deafening sound made from many sounds of rushing wind charged toward the beast tide a short distance away. Following Han Yu, the arrow formation behind him followed with a rumbling sound. A rushing wind noise echoed across the sky. Roar roar. This large formation was discovered by many ferocious beasts when it was still 10,000 feet from the beast tide. Roars that were filled with a violence rang out like thunder. These roars spread into the distance and stirred even more roars. Charge. The 10,000-foot distance was covered in the blink of an eye. Frightening do qi surged out of the bodies of Han Yu's group at the front before shooting forward. All of the ferocious beasts within 1,000 feet were shattered into blood pools in an instant. At the same time, this large group ruthlessly charged into the beast tide. Bang bang. The group unleashed a shocking momentum the moment it collided with the beast tide. Waves of powerful do qi spluttered out. The ferocious beasts within 1,000 feet were shattered to death. The roars that the ferocious beasts had emitted before their deaths continued to reverberate across the sky. Xiao Yang's large group was situated near the middle of the contingent. A couple of do qi pillars were occasionally swung out, killing any ferocious beasts that approached. At the same time, their eyes continued to sweep around them. The ferocious beasts in this outer part of the beast tide were not very strong, which was why they were able to push in so easily. Once they entered deeper into the beast tide, this fearless advancement would likely be stopped. Reality was just as Xiao Yang's group had expected. After this group had forcefully torn a large hole through the beast tide and advanced 10,000 feet, the surrounding pressure suddenly began to soar. Some of the powerful ferocious beasts were able to charge closer to the group. The stench they gave off caused the expressions of many people to appear a little grave. Bang! Zun Er randomly tossed a do qi pillar out and killed 2 ferocious beasts charging toward them. There was an additional solemnness on her face as she said, "It is already possible to see some Do-Zone class ferocious beasts here. If we continue to advance, we will end up meeting some Do-Zone equivalent beasts. That will be when the true battle will begin. Everyone should be careful. Do not get entangled with them. One will definitely die if one falls to this beast tide." Xiao Yang nodded. They were gradually advancing deeper into the beast tide. There were a countless number of ferocious beasts in front of them, to their left, to their right and even up in the sky. They could no longer retreat. All they could do was charge forward until they truly broke through the beast tide. Using a momentary lull in fighting, Xiao Yang's eyes swept over the front of the arrow formation. At this moment, Han Yu's group seemed to be doing their best to attack the ferocious beasts in front. Row after row of ferocious beasts shook and fell to their hands. The group continued to venture deeper under their guidance. At this moment, many people had begun to gradually believe that Han Yu was indeed performing his due diligence for this group. However, Xiao Yang was naturally not included with the people who thought this. The group swiftly advanced as the ground trembled. Fresh blood and ferocious beasts' corpses landed everywhere they passed, but the scarlet fresh blood did not frighten the beast tide. Instead, it caused the beasts to become crazier as they charged at the contingent without any fear of death. This swift advancement continued for about 20,000 feet before it clearly slowed. Some of the ferocious beasts were able to charge to the front of the group. After which, they exchanged blows with some experts. Although these ferocious beasts would quickly turn into a pool of blood by the combined effort of many experts, the situation had clearly become a little more difficult. If one were to look down on these plains from the sky, one would be able to see an increasing number of ferocious beasts heading toward the group of humans after hearing the commotion. They were densely packed and appeared like an army of ants, causing one's skin to turn numb. Bang! The situation became more difficult, and in the end, even with the combined attacks of many experts, the group was no longer able to quickly kill some of the ferocious beasts. A terrible physical battle had finally begun. While Han Yu's group was fighting an intense battle with the beast tied at the front, everyone could clearly sense their speed greatly slow. With this reduction in speed, the ferocious beasts from the left, right and center quickly gave chase. After which, a miserable battle suddenly erupted. Roar! Boom! Many different ferocious beasts with red eyes wildly charged into the group. Although most of the ferocious beasts were killed by the combined effort of some experts, some exceptionally strong ferocious beasts still managed to approach the group. Hence, the group began to experience some injuries and deaths. Sharp miserable screeches continued to spread from all around. Move quickly! The faces of most people turned pale when faced with such an enormous pressure. They hurriedly urged the entire group to push forward. At this moment, Xiao Yang's eyes once again swept to the front, but he discovered that Han Yu and those experts from the Hall of Souls had completely vanished. The group at the front consisted of experts who were being pushed by those from the back. They were unable to retreat and could only charge forward. As these experts at the front faced various ferocious beasts, they did their best to unleash their attacks. However, they became more exhausted by each beast they killed. When they wanted to withdraw, they suddenly discovered that many people's eyes had turned red after being surrounded by the beast tide. These people were pushing forward with all their might, and the experts at the front found that they could not pull back. They did not have the opportunity to withdraw and their do qi was exhausted. Before they could feel hopeless in their hearts, they would be ruthlessly bitten by the enormous bloody mouths of the ferocious beasts that were wildly pouncing over. After these people were bitten to death by the ferocious beasts, another group was pushed forward. They forcefully endured before this cycle repeated itself. There was no longer a need for anyone to urge this group at the moment. Everyone was charging forward in order to survive. Hence, there was an endless number of people being pushed to the front, becoming a sacrifice for the advancement of the group. Hence, as the group advanced further, the number of people also began to diminish. Many people lost their sense of reasoning because of these losses. The group started to lose control. Only a small group of people were able to retain their rational mind and tried their best to maintain their speed to avoid allowing themselves to be pushed by the human flow to the front. Xiao Yang's group was one such example. The expressions on the faces of Xiao Yang's group were filled with a seriousness as they looked at the rapidly shrinking contingent. Even some 6 or 7-star Do Zuns were exhausted by these continuous battles. Finally, they were tossed into the ferocious beast crowd, torn into pieces in the blink of an eye, and swallowed into the stomachs of the ferocious beasts. These people. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over the force that had shrunk 10 times. He discovered Han Yu's group at the back of the group with a gentle smile still Han Yu's face. However, this smile appeared exceptionally sinister among the surrounding viscous blood and corpses. Xiao Yang GGE, this force is about to be broken. We will follow if Han Yu's group takes the lead and moves when the time comes. We will have to rely on ourselves to transverse the remaining route. Zun Er's voice was suddenly transmitted into Xiao Yang's ears while his eyes were sweeping around. Xiao Yang nodded and slowly exhaled. His eyes glanced behind at the ferocious beasts and humans' corpses. These people had used all of their strength only to end up benefiting others for free. They had been used by Han Yu without gaining anything. Bang! A completely black metal-like beast suddenly appeared at the front of the contingent. Its enormous fist ruthlessly smashed a couple of figures at the front. The frightening force smashed those people, whose do qi had been exhausted, into mincemeat. While the people in front were being blocked by that extremely strong beast, Han Yu's group pressed their toes on the ground. Their bodies leaped over everyone with lightning-like speed. Finally, they flashed by the enormous beast and charged forward. Follow them. Xiao Yang let out a cold snort when he saw Han Yu finally abandon everyone. He waved his hand and his body took the lead to rush forward. Zun Er and the rest quickly followed. Another few groups of people flew out the same time Xiao Yang's group moved. These people had already understood Han Yu's schemes and were also intending on using the strength of the others to charge through the beast tide. After these people rushed forward, the remaining hundreds of people were pounced upon by the ferocious beasts around them. Miserable screams spread across over the sky. Xiao Yang's group rushed through the air. Han Yu's group was a couple thousand feet in front of them. They had not exhausted much do qi with their powerful strength. While the others became crazy after being pushed into the ferocious beasts, they had rested. Thus, they were prepared to break through. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over Han Yu's group in front. After which, he glanced behind him. The group from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe was a short distance behind. The man with the colorful pupils, called Ju Feng, was leading them. The many Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe experts were guarding something behind him. Xiao Yang caught sight of Feng Qing in this group. At this moment, she had woken up. Although a red handprint remained on her face, she, at the very least, had retained her life. Feng Qing lifted her head while Xiao Yang was observing the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe's group. Her eyes clashed with Xiao Yang's eyes as she grit her silver teeth. However, she held back this time around and did not dare to express the hatred in her heart. Xiao Yang's slap earlier had woken her up. Xiao Yang was unconcerned about Feng Qing. Although her strength had soared, her future achievement was limited and would not pose much of a threat. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe. After which, he looked further behind where a couple of groups were following them. These people possessed quite a great strength. From the looks of it, they understood the beast tide here relatively well. Hence, they had retained most of their strength and did not exhaust a large amount of do qi when they charged in earlier. We are still in the beast tide. I wonder if there will be even stronger ferocious beast near the back. Xiao Yang lifted his head. The scarlet-red beasts seemed to have become sparser near the distant horizon. That place was likely the end of the beast tide. However, no one knew if there would be some extremely difficult to deal with ferocious beasts there. Although many ferocious beasts had appeared during this journey, the strongest one that Xiao Yang had met was only equivalent to a 5-star Dozun. He had not met any stronger ones. Roar. Many furious roars filled with violence once again rang out while Xiao Yang was in deep thought. He then vaguely sensed an additional pressure form around them. Have those people behind been finished off? Xiao Yang was quiet. There had been dozens of elite Dozuns in that group. However, these numbers were not worth mentioning to this beast tide. Even though their resistance was extremely intense, its futile death was only a matter of time. The thing that caused Xiao Yang's heart to sink a little was that even with so many people, they were only able to endure for a short period of time. Everyone, be careful. Maintain the formation from earlier. Brother Qingyang, the both of us will open a path up front. Xiao Yang gently exhaled. He leaped forward and appeared at the front of the group. He issued orders in a deep voice. Once those ferocious beasts' attention shifted away from those people behind, the pressure they would face would abruptly soar. Hence, they needed to begin to increase their advancement speed. Understood. Jiyu Qingyang also understood their current situation. He nodded and moved, appearing beside Xiao Yang as he did. The remaining people formed a triangular shape. The weakest were placed in the middle. The remaining people would take turns to fight. This tactic would enable them to sustain their advancement for a prolonged period of time. The beast tide has arrived. Charge. Xiao Yang's eyes swept around. All he saw was scarlet eyes, and all he heard was a heavy panting. A cold cry appeared as his speed suddenly increased. A hot heavenly flame surged out of his body and turned into a 1,000-foot-large fire dragon that gave off a dragon roar. The fire dragon's large tail was violently swung while its body forcefully killed hundreds of ferocious beasts with earth-shaking steps. See flipping seal. Jiyu Qingyang unleashed hundreds of handprints when Xiao Yang attacked. His handprints whistled out and cleared the surrounding beasts. At the same time, Zun Cai Lin, Yun Yun, the little fairy doctor and the rest behind attacked. Vast and mighty do qi spread apart as the ferocious beasts within a 100-meter radius were completely eliminated. Their speed was not reduced while they attacked. Within the blink of an eye, they had charged 1,000 feet forward. Their strength could be considered quite powerful. If they joined hands, they would be able to successfully charge across the plains if they did not meet any overly powerful ferocious beasts, but unleashing this heavenly flame form was extremely exhausting. However, this exhaustion did not pose much of a problem to Xiao Yang, who possessed many do qi recovery medicinal pills. Those fellows are really quick. Xiao Yang looked at Han Yu while he maintained his speed. Han Yu's group had finally unleashed their true strength at this moment. Not a single ferocious beast could charge into a 1,000-foot radius of them. Frightening do qi saturated the air around them like a chaotic wave, wildly killing any ferocious beasts that charged at them. How much longer? Xiao Yang controlled the fire dragon above his head. It whistled out and cleared away the ferocious beasts in front of his group. His mouth let out an inquiry in a deep voice at the same time. Although they could endure on, this continuous exhaustion was clearly not a solution. We have already reached the deepest parts of the beast tide. Based on this speed, we will be able to successfully break through in half an hour. Of course, the precondition is that we do not meet any troublesome beasts. Even we have never charged this far before until. All we can do is to rely on the information obtained from the clan and make a guess. Zun quickly replied. Half an hour. Xiao Yang knit his brow when he heard how much longer it would take. The difficulty of charging through this beast tide was indeed extraordinary. If those people from earlier had not gone all out to charge forward, Xiao Yang's group would have found it even more difficult to charge through this beast tide. Increase our speed, do not allow the beast tide to completely stop us. Xiao Yang softly cried out. The strength of his attacks suddenly soared. At the same time, their speed suddenly increased. The people behind formed a tacit understanding as Xiao Yang's increased speed. They quickly followed and continued to clear the surroundings of the beast tide. This group of theirs was smaller than even an ant in this endless beast tide. Nevertheless, the strength that erupted from them was extremely powerful despite their small numbers, and the people here truly cooperated with each other. None of them were full of doubt like the people from earlier. Their advancement speed was not the least bit slower than the large contingent from earlier. A couple of groups were like small boats flowing against the current of an enormous beast tide. They swayed about and could overturn at any moment, but they ultimately remained afloat and charged through the growing strength of the beast tide with a constant speed, quickly reaching the end. Bang! Xiao Yang's palm blasted apart the head of a ferocious beast that had charged to within 50 feet from the group. After which, he once again acted with lightning-like speed as he forced back the ferocious beast on Jiyu Qingyang's left. Zun'er intervened and quickly killed it. Thanks. Jiyu Qingyang forced back a couple of ferocious beast with a strike of his palm. He quickly uttered words of thanks without turning his head. Some perspiration had formed on his forehead. Such a prolonged period of exhaustion was an extreme burden to him, and as he progressed deeper, the strength of the surrounding ferocious beasts had increased. By now, even if Xiao Yang, Jiyu Qingyang, and the rest attacked, they would need to attack a couple of times before they would be able to kill a ferocious beast. Their advancement speed had significantly slowed. If this continues, we will not be able to endure on even with the support of medicinal pills. Xiao Yang exhaled as he made a statement. Han Yu's group has disappeared. Zun'er's pretty eyes swept over the area in front of them as she suddenly said. They have already charged out. Jiyu Qingyang was surprised as he exclaimed. Oh! Surprise flashed within Xiao Yang's eyes when he heard this news. A joy quickly appeared on his face. We are reaching the end of the beast tide. Quick, increase our speed. Xiao Yang waved his hand. His mind was braced as his sluggish attacks became ferocious once again. A couple of handprints of flames were shot out, shaking a couple of huge 9-star Dozun beasts until they were forced to pull back. His body took the opportunity to rush forward. Zun'er and the rest quickly followed behind him. Xiao Yang's group suddenly became faster upon learning that they were about to break free from the beast tide. The Do Qi within their bodies completely erupted and forced aside the ferocious beasts that were pouncing over. Bang! Do Qi erupted from Xiao Yang's body and formed a fire dragon that ruthlessly smashed into a 1,000-foot-large ferocious beast body in front of him. That powerful force blasted its body until a bloody fog formed. The large beast's body collapsed on the ground because of the great pain. Xiao Yang's group took this opportunity to fly through the air beyond it. Xiao Yang's body landed on the ground after flying out. Do Qi began to circulate within his body as a reflexive action, but he was stunned to find that no ferocious beasts had pounced over. Only then did he lift his head and sweep his eyes around. He discovered that his surroundings was completely empty. After turning his head, he saw a countless number of ferocious beasts were wildly roaring at them with scarlet eyes 100 feet away, but they did not dare to charge over for some unknown reason. Have we charged out? Xiao Yang's group was startled when they saw the roaring beasts that did not dare approach. They heaved a sigh of relief within their hearts. Xiao Yang turned after sighing in relief. He looked ahead to see an enormous lush green ancient tree standing alone within this spacious plain 10,000 feet away. A clear air spread from above the ancient tree. It would occasionally transform into various shapes, appearing mysterious and unfathomable. Is this the legendary Bodhisattva ancient tree? Xiao Yang's heart began to pound as he looked at the ancient tree standing in the distance. An extremely old aura surrounded it. Bodhisattva ancient tree? Zun'er and the rest discovered the ancient tree in the distance while Xiao Yang was feeling stunned. Many exclamations were emitted from their mouths with some shock. This thing, which only existed in legends, was something that even they, from the ancient clans, had only been able to see in some ancient books. What a large tree! The little fairy doctor muttered. Even though they were extremely far from the Bodhisattva ancient tree, they were still able to sense just how enormous it was. Tree shadows spread and covered the ground, giving it the appearance of an ancient monster that stood between the sky and the earth. An extremely old and experienced feeling radiated from it. The members of the Han clan are likely already there. We should hurry up. Xiao Yang suppressed the fiery heat within his heart. He waved his hand and took the lead to rush toward the ancient tree in the distance. Zun'er and the rest behind him could not be bothered with resting as they quickly followed. Some commotion was once again transmitted from the beast tide behind after Xiao Yang's group moved. A couple of groups charged out in a miserable manner before they landed in this empty area. That is the Bodhisattva ancient tree. These people were still staggering on the ground when they saw the ancient tree that stood between the sky and the earth. A red color suddenly surged into their eyes. This color was reinforced when they saw Xiao Yang's group hurrying over. They were unable to remain still. Even the usually calm Ju Feng frowned. He could not be bothered with resting as he commanded in a deep voice, "Follow them." Understood. The experts from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe clenched their teeth and nodded when they heard his order. Their bodies rushed forward and they hurriedly chased after Xiao Yang's group. These people. Xiao Yang coldly laughed in his heart when he heard the sound of rushing wind transmitted from behind. He did not reduce his speed as he lifted his head and looked at the Bodhisattva ancient tree, which was growing larger in his eyes. A faint fear and respect rose from within his heart. No one would be able to remain calm in front of this divine being that had existed for an unknown amount of time. Xiao Yang's group was extremely quick. The tens of thousands of feet of distance was covered within a short few minutes. When Xiao Yang's group was about 1,000 feet away from the Bodhisattva ancient tree, a group of people suddenly appeared in their line of sight. Hanyu. Xiao Yang's group was startled when they saw this group. These people had remained here and waited for the others. "Be careful," Xiao Yang softly warned. His speed gradually slowed. After which, he slowly landed a short distance behind Hanyu. His eyes swept over the group. Subsequently, he lifted his eyes and looked at the Bodhisattva ancient tree a short distance away. Being this close to the Bodhisattva ancient tree was undoubtedly shocking. It looked like a towering pillar that supported the sky. Its trunk radiated an ancient aura. The branches of the Bodhisattva ancient tree were huge and could cover half of a city. Wave after wave of rich fresh air spread from the ancient tree. This caused the sky to occasionally form many mysterious phenomenons. Sunlight was currently scattering down from the sky. It landed on the ancient tree and gave it a somewhat crystal clear appearance. A powerful life force that shocked Xiao Yang's group spread over. Xiao Yang's eyes stared intensely at the indescribable Bodhisattva ancient tree. The clear air caused one to feel carefree and untroubled, but he vaguely felt an uneasiness for no reason. This uneasiness originated from Xiao Yang's powerful soul. He wasn't able to detect any immediate danger since the uneasiness that he sensed was extremely obscure. One would not be able to sense it if one did not carefully feel for it. A natural treasure like the Bodhisattva ancient tree can be ranked top 3 across the Dochi continent. It would be impossible if it did not radiate any danger. Additionally, if this ancient tree has really survived for a countless number of years, it should have already formed its own consciousness. Xiao Yang revealed an expression of contemplation. If this bodhisattva formed a conscious and trained, it would undoubtedly be one of the most terrifying creatures within the Dochi continent. The people here would likely be no match for it. The sound of rushing wind followed close behind while Xiao Yang's group was pondering some thoughts. The Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe and the other few groups hurried over. Finally, they looked at Xiao Yang's and Han Yu's group before slowly landing. "Hey, it was extremely difficult to come here. Why has everyone stopped?" Ju Feng slowly walked forward and faintly laughed. Xiao Yang glanced at Ju Feng but did not speak. On the other hand, Han Yu, who was in front of them, turned around. His original frown was relaxed as he laughed. "Haha, everyone is finally here. Since everyone's aim is the Bodhisattva ancient tree, I naturally waited for everyone." Everyone present smiled when they heard his words. Those who were able to arrive were extraordinary people. They had already seen through Han Yu. This person might appear friendly on the surface, but his very bones were filled with a ruthlessness. Those who believed his words had remained in the beast tide. They had been turned into shattered meat before being devoured into the ferocious beast's stomachs. Han Yu was indifferent when he saw everyone's superficial smiles. A smile still appeared on his face. He pointed to the Bodhisattva ancient tree behind him and said, "This is our aim. Although we have broken through the beast tide, the most difficult thing to deal with is still the Bodhisattva ancient tree." Oh! Everyone's heart shook when they heard his words. Their eyes paused on Han Yu's face. There is a record on a scroll within our Han clan that an ancestor had once come to the Bodhisattva ancient tree. However, contact with him was eventually lost. By the time the experts from my clan had received news, both he and the Bodhisattva ancient tree had completely disappeared. Han Yu laughed. "Although I do not know what happened to that ancestor, he most likely died. It is likely that he fell to the hands of the Bodhisattva ancient tree. Additionally, the strength of this ancestor was a Ban Sheng." Ban Sheng? The expressions of Xiao Yang's group changed. Even a Ban Sheng expert had gone missing because of this Bodhisattva ancient tree. Therefore, everyone should not underestimate this Bodhisattva ancient tree. The most dangerous thing during this trip will be that. Han Yu slowly explained. "The reason that you are waiting here is because you do not wish to head there alone, right?" Jiyu Qingyang glanced at Han Yun and remarked. Han Yu smiled but did not deny Jiyu Qingyang's words. He rotated his body and slowly walked toward the enormous Bodhisattva ancient tree. Since everyone had arrived, they would all get to see the mysteries of this Bodhisattva ancient tree. Han Yu was not afraid that the others would not follow because he understood the allure of the Bodhisattva ancient tree. "Be careful." Xiao Yang's eyes swept over Han Yu's back and the distant Bodhisattva ancient tree. He softly uttered those words before lifting his leg to follow. Regardless of whether Han Yu was speaking the truth, it was impossible for them to give up so easily after spending so much to reach this place. Everyone nodded. After which, they followed Xiao Yang. Do Qi quietly began to circulate around his body. Ju Feng and the other few groups behind Xiao Yang hesitated for a moment before choosing to follow. Their thoughts were the same as Xiao Yang's. They had spent so much effort to arrive. Gaps formed between the various groups as they traveled across the spacious grassy plains. They adopted a similar pace as they slowly headed toward the towering tree. Young Master Xiao Yang, something is not quite right with the Bodhisattva ancient tree. That clear air, which seems to be filled with life, hides a somewhat dark and chilly miasma. It's filled with many negative emotions similar to those of humans. Qing Lin suddenly spoke with a grave face as the group walked closer to the Bodhisattva ancient tree. Xiao Yang's footsteps momentarily paused when he heard her words. His eyes narrowed. He was naturally unable to sense such a thing, but Qing Lin possessed the triple jade-green snake flower pupils. Hence, Xiao Yang did not doubt her words, and he was able to vaguely sense the uneasy feeling from earlier become more prominent as he approached the Bodhisattva ancient tree. While the caution within Xiao Yang's heart soared, Han Yu's group at the front suddenly halted. They stood quite close to the Bodhisattva ancient tree. The towering, vast, lush, and green tree covered the sky above them. Only after getting this close, did Xiao Yang's group gradually feel an extremely obscure chill slowly seep into their bones. Xiao Yang lifted his head. His eyes focused on the enormous Bodhisattva ancient tree. Its tree branches were 1,000 feet in size with a bright cluster near the center. This light cluster looked like a 10-foot large energy heart. A powerful heartbeat was vaguely emitted from the light cluster. Bodhisattva heart. Many eyes gathered on the light cluster that was hidden by the body of the enormous tree. Their hearts violently pounded at this moment. Crash. After the words Bodhisattva heart were emitted from the mouths of some people, the Bodhisattva ancient tree, which had been standing quietly within this grassland, suddenly emitted a crashing sound. Everyone watched as the tree branches twined together before being lowered. These tree branches slowly split apart upon making contact with the ground, and 5 expressionless figures slowly stepped away from them. The very space around them began to fluctuate after these 5 figures stepped forward. A frightening pressure suddenly spread from them. Elite Ban Shungs. The faces of everyone present became ugly when they sensed this pressure because they had discovered that these 5 figures were actually all elite Ban Shungs. Everyone felt their skin become slightly numb when they saw the 5 figures appear in front of the Bodhisattva ancient tree. They would not have imagined that there were Ban Sheng class experts hidden within this Bodhisattva ancient tree. 5 elite Ban Sheng, there is no life in them. Xiao Yang inhaled a deep breath. He suppressed the shock in his heart. His eyes suddenly swept over the 5 figures before twitching. Nor are their souls present, they are merely puppets. Zana softly came to a conclusion. Her face was filled with a seriousness. Puppet. One need not use one's head to know that these elite Ban Shengs had been turned into puppets by this Bodhisattva ancient tree. Everyone began to feel as though they were covered in a cold sweat when they thought of what happened. Turning an elite Ban Sheng into a puppet, who across the continent possessed the frightening strength to do this. Once one reached the Ban Sheng class, one would be in existence close to the peak of the world. Ban Shengs were a relatively powerful force even in the ancient clans, but experts of such a level had been captured and turned into puppets. This scene undoubtedly caused everyone present to feel a chill in their hearts. Han Yu's expression had become relatively ugly because of these puppets, especially after his eyes landed on a skinny black-robed elite Ban Sheng. The shock in his eyes had suddenly reached as dense as it could get. Isn't this our missing Ban Sheng ancestor? The one said to have disappeared with the Bodhisattva ancient tree in the old texts of the clan? The faces of everyone involuntarily twitched upon hearing Han Yu's exclamation. Their eyes looked at the black-robed Ban Sheng. At this moment, his face was hollow, and his eyes did not contain the slightest ripple. The figure's skin vaguely showed signs of cracking from being too dry. The puppet did not display any reaction to Han Yu's voice. What should we do now? Jiyu Qingyang's face was grave. 5 elite Ban Shengs was a lineup that could only be described with the word horrifying. Even if all of them here were to combine their strength, they would probably still be no match for this lineup, despite their numerical superiority. Xiao Yang frowned. His eyes glanced at the light cluster being emitted from the Bodhisattva ancient tree. The Bodhisattva heart was in front of him. He really did not possess the decisiveness to give it up so easily. We should be able to hold against an elite Ban Sheng if our group join hands. Xiao Yang's eyes glanced at the lineup beside him. Zun and Jiyu Qingyang were all experts at the peak of the Dozun class. Zun was on the 8th change while Jiyu Qingyang was on the 6th change. Adding Xiao Yang, whose strength was comparable to a 6th or 7th change expert, as well as Cai Lin, the little fairy doctor, Yun Yun, Qing Cheng, Jiyu Hua, Jiyu Li, and the rest should be able to fight against an elite Bansheng. However, there was more than just one elite Bansheng here. There were 5 of them. Everyone, is there anyone who wishes to give up now and leave? From the looks of it, as long as we do not advance further, these Bansheng puppets will not attack. In other words, we still have a chance to retreat now if we wish to. Xiao Yang mused for a moment before turning his head to inquire in a faint voice. Everyone present knit their brows upon hearing Xiao Yang's words. Finally, they shook their heads. Since no one wishes to withdraw, we can only try and engage in an all-out fight. Our side has 7 groups. My group will block 1 elite Bansheng. The other 4 will be distributed among the rest of you. What do you say? Among the groups that had arrived, there was the Hun clan and the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe besides Xiao Yang's group. Xiao Yang had never met the other 4 groups before, but it was likely that they belonged to some other factions within the Central Plains. Their lineup might not be comparable to Xiao Yang, Hun Ya, or Zhu Feng, but they could not be underestimated. Each of their groups had at least 2 experts who had reached the peak of the Dozun class. We can block one of them. Hun Yu glanced at Xiao Yang, but he did not cause any trouble at this moment. He understood that if someone really chose to withdraw, the remaining people would definitely not be able to fight with the 5 elite Banshengs. Leave one of them to us. Zhu Feng hesitated for a moment before taking one. These experts might be frightening, but they were only puppets and could not compare to a genuine Bansheng. They should be able to fight these puppets by relying on their large numbers. The remaining 2 Banshengs will be left to the other 4 groups. What do you say? Xiao Yang's eyes jumped between the remaining 4 groups. The strength of any single one of these groups might not be comparable to Xiao Yang's, but it should be possible for 2 groups to deal with 1 Bansheng puppet alone. The people in the 4 groups looked at each other after hearing Xiao Yang's words. After which, they looked at the spot where the Bodhisattva heart was before violently nodding. They were willing to risk it because of the temptation of the Bodhisattva heart. Since no one has any objections, let's attack. Xiao Yang slowly exhaled. His expression became extremely grave. This was the first time he would be fighting an elite Bansheng. Although the fighting strength of this puppet was not comparable to a genuine Bansheng, it was still ultimately an expert who could be considered a Sheng no matter how one put it. Anything that was even the least bit related to this word could be considered extremely powerful. Xiao Yang slowly took 3 steps forward after his final word sounded. Do Qi whistled from within his body in all directions. Bang! Those 5 unmoving statue-like puppets' empty eyes suddenly landed on Xiao Yang when he took a 3rd step forward. Their hollow eyes remained watching him as one of them stepped forward with a stiff and unusual gait. It appeared in front of Xiao Yang in a flash. That figure did not speak as a frightening palm shattered space and slammed towards Xiao Yang with lightning-like speed. Xiao Yang stomped his foot on the ground as the Bansheng puppet ferociously attacked. An enormous lava pillar shot out of the ground and violently collided with the puppet. However, the lava pillar, which was strong enough to force an ordinary 9-star Dozun back and cough out blood, only caused that Bansheng's puppet to tremble. The ferocious palm wind continued to slam towards Xiao Yang without any changes. Bang! Over a dozen extremely powerful Do Qi pillars suddenly whistled from behind Xiao Yang when the Bansheng puppet's attack was about to strike him. All of them struck the puppet. With the combined attacks of so many people, even an expert who had reached the top of the 9th change of the peak Dozun class would not dare to forcefully receive them all, yet this Bansheng puppet received the attacks even though its palm attack was shattered. Attack! While Xiao Yang's group was beginning to exchange blows with a Bansheng puppet, Hun Yu's group did not delay any longer. They let out a cold cry. Many figures rushed out at the same time and surrounded the Bansheng puppet from the Hun clan. Ancestor, we will help relieve you of your pain. Hun Yu looked at the hollow-faced puppet and spoke in a faint voice. After which, he charged forward. There were over 10 extremely powerful Hall of Souls experts swiftly following behind him. Majestic Do Qi began to pester that Bansheng puppet. Zhu Feng's group and the others also began to act after Xiao Yang's and Hun Yu's group did. They unleashed the Do Qi within their bodies to the limit. After which, they wildly charged forward and encircled the remaining 3 Bansheng puppets in separate areas. In an instant, frightening Do Qi spread over this spacious plains. The Do Qi was like sharp wind that devastated the surroundings. Although they had an advantage in numbers, not one of them was a genuine Bansheng. Hence, this would undoubtedly be an extremely miserable battle. Bang! Jiyu Hua and Jiyu Xing rushed down from the air as Do Qi erupted from both of their palms in all directions. Their Do Qi violently smashed into the back of that Bansheng puppet, but their incomparably ferocious attack appeared like a rock sinking in the ocean when it landed on the Bansheng puppet. Their bodies shook while a terrifying force followed their arms and surged into them. With the reflection of such a frightening force, the defenses on both Jiyu Hua and Jiyu Xing were instantly destroyed. Their bodies flew back before they were hurriedly received by a couple of flower sect elders. Both parties had already exchanged blows for 20 minutes since they had begun to fight. On Xiaoyang's side, the flower sect elders would momentarily lose their fighting strength if they came into contact with some of the forceful wind from the puppet. Fortunately, Xiaoyang, Jiyu Qingyang, Zun and the other main pillars of strength were powerful. Hence, they were able to firmly restrain this Ban Sheng puppet. Attack its head. Xiaoyang cried out loud. The puppet was without life. Other than bursting apart its head, it was basically impossible to stop a puppet. King Kong glass body. Octane blast. A golden glow suddenly surged from Xiaoyang's body when his cry sounded. His body suddenly swelled at this moment. His fist, which seemed to be made of metal, took advantage of when the Ban Sheng puppet's attention was attracted by Jiyu Qingyang. He swung his fist into the puppet's head with lightning-like speed. Bang! Xiaoyang's fist, which contained a frightening strength, ruthlessly smashed into the puppet's head. A powerful force shook the Ban Sheng puppet's head until some cracks formed, but no fresh blood flowed from those cracks. Clearly, these puppets' bodies had dried after a countless number of years of weathering. The Ban Sheng puppet suddenly turned when the punch hit its head. Its stiff arm was slammed into Xiaoyang's shoulder like a bolt of lightning. Xiaoyang's body staggered over a dozen steps back after being struck by the Ban Sheng puppet. Part of his shoulder had even been dented in. However, it was fortunate that his body had become extremely hard after activating the King Kong glass body. There was also the existence of the Insect Emperor cloth and the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor protecting him. These factors helped him to not split out blood and fly backwards. Continue attacking its head. Destroy it. Great silent destruction finger. Zun and Jiyu Qingyang attacked at the same time. Jiyu Qingyang's face was solemn as his hand seals rapidly changed. Two enormous energy fingers that carried an annihilation aura suddenly broke through the sky and furiously pressed down on the Ban Sheng puppet's head with lightning-like speed. Great silent destruction finger. Behind Zun and Jiyu Qingyang, Jiyu Hua and Jiyu Xing also unleashed this extremely powerful Tian-class Do skill with pale faces. Two somewhat dim energy fingers quickly appeared. Bang! Colorful thunderbolts seemed to have gathered in the sky at this moment before striking the Ban Sheng puppet. The thunderbolt attack was from Cai Lin. Everyone seemed to have attacked at the same time as if they had made a tacit agreement. Many frightening attacks simultaneously landed on the Ban Sheng puppet's head. The body of that Ban Sheng puppet suddenly trembled as so many frightening attacks accumulated. The head of the puppet, where many crack lines had appeared because of Xiaoyang's attack earlier, emitted a bang and suddenly disappeared. This video will end here.